good to be with you on day 6 of Restored Vows. We're grateful you're here with us as we continue day by day. We know the pain is real and the betrayal is real, which we'll dive into today. But let's take a moment to be grateful for the grace to come to this point of the series. Our marriage has been on a long, bumpy journey, but we have never given up. We encourage you to also keep going, just one day at a time.
Today I'm going to continue to share my side of the story as we talk about betrayal trauma. It doesn't matter whether you've been married 1 year, 2 years, a decade, or longer. There is real hurt when you come to discover your spouse's porn use, especially if it's been a hidden secret. I remember the first time in our dating relationship when Brandon told me he had fallen. I was crushed and hurt, struggling with feelings of confusion, disappointment, and disbelief. I thought Brandon was so sweet, generous, and engaging. Everything I could see from the outside was good. I couldn't understand the darkness that hid beneath. I left the car crying. I needed to get away from him. I genuinely felt that the Lord was calling me to a relationship with Brandon. And like I mentioned last time, I was grateful he was being honest, but this was completely out of my league. My lifestyle had been so pure, I could not understand why the Lord would call me to this darkness. As the falls would continue into our engagement, I was conflicted. Brandon always showed signs of wanting to get clean. He knew it was wrong, confessed when he fell, and wanted to be open and honest about it. These were affirmations of the man he wanted to be, and I wanted to support them and applauded the effort. And then the first fall came in marriage. I thought I could help him overcome this addiction by having an amazing sex life and being a generous wife, but it wasn't working. I began to have thoughts that maybe the reason for his addiction was that I wasn't enough. Even though I could give all of myself in a way I couldn't have before marriage, I couldn't compete with the porn. The disappointment I felt was more in myself and my inability to win out over the other women.
The selfishness, pride, and anger that came with the porn caused me to not invest in our relationship. Things started to get nasty, and we entered our fighting stage. The honeymoon was over. It's not an exaggeration to say that we were fighting 2-3 times a week, sometimes more, mostly over small, unimportant things.
I was thrown into a sea of confusion emotionally. It was like falling out of a canoe, and instead of your partner pulling you back into the canoe, he pushes your head underwater. You come up for air, only to have your head pushed back down over and over again, barely able to breathe. I told my sister one time, I feel like I'm married to an alcoholic, but he doesn't drink, so it doesn't make sense to me. I can't reason with him. I would later come to find out the extent to which a long-time addiction to porn can have on the brain, especially in terms of emotional control and stability. The only form of addiction I experienced before this was in my extended family with alcoholism, which is why I equated his behavior to that of an alcoholic. It was like walking in a dark tunnel, trying to feel with my feet and hands where I should go. I then realized that this was going to be our big struggle, and all the little things we fought about were meaningless, and they would stem from this. But I had no clue how to move forward. I just knew that we had to move forward, one step at a time, sometimes one moment at a time. My relationship with God deepened, and I became more dependent on Him than I had ever been, as I sought to forgive each time Brandon fell and not carry it over until the next time he fell. I strove and struggled to see him no longer as my husband, but my brother in Christ, who had a struggle with a specific sin. I tried to walk the Christian walk with my husband through this, but slowly I wore down. Over time, the porn use became less. We fought less, but each fall wore me down more and more. This cycle continued for 3 years, until one day, after he apologized, I looked at him my hope all but gone, and very coldly said, "I know. You're always sorry." I became very cold towards him and struggled with being physically affectionate, even though I still longed for physical intimacy with my husband. I tried to fight off being bitter towards his addiction, and at one point in one of our arguments told him in my hurt to just go have sex with yourself. Pull up your little pictures and do your little thing. You've done it before. After we went through a program for hurting marriages, which we'll talk more about on day 11, I had the confidence to give him the ultimatum: either get help or get out. This was a big step. I finally admitted I was maxed out. There was no more I could give, and I thought this was my only option. I knew we both needed help, but if Brandon wasn't willing to get the help that he personally needed, there wasn't any hope for saving our marriage. I didn't think it was emotionally safe for us to stay together, which is why I had to give the ultimatum.
So Tonia and I talked a lot about her feelings of betrayal and even trauma. Even though she tried to extend forgiveness to me many times, my struggle still wore her down. And that's a perfectly normal response. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and forgiveness doesn't mean the behavior should continue. Wives, if you are struggling to forgive your husband, that does not make you a bad person or a bad Christian. Today we want you to continue to focus on the wife and her emotional state. Wives, have you experienced trauma like Tonia did? You might be feeling a gap between the head knowledge of how you're supposed to respond to him as a Christian and how you're actually feeling. Explore that gap today. We'll see you again tomorrow. God bless you.